November 2002, Windsor Castle's East Gate, 11 p.m., rain hammering ancient stone. Margaret collapsed against iron railings, 74 years reduced to 3 plastic bags and soaked clothes. Her granddaughters, Sarah, 42, and Claire, 38, tried shielding her with their bodies, but the cold rain found every gap. Palace security watched from the guardhouse. Protocol said move them along. One guard hesitated, radioed inside. Situation at East Gate. Inside Buckingham Palace, Queen Elizabeth II sat in her private study, reading constituency briefing papers. She glanced out the rain-streaked window, saw 3 figures huddled in the downpour. Something about the elderly woman's posture, dignity mixed with desperation, made the Queen pause mid-page. She picked up her private phone line, gave a quiet instruction that would violate 50 years of royal protocol. What happened next changed 3 lives forever and stayed secret for 20 years. 3 weeks earlier, Margaret still had keys to the council flat in Pimlico, where she'd lived for 30 years. Then the pension stopped. Computer error, they said. She'd been flagged as deceased in the system. By the time bureaucrats sorted it out, rent arrears had piled up. Eviction notice. No appeal. Sarah had just been laid off from her nursing position at St. Thomas's Hospital. Budget cuts. Claire lost her teaching job the same month when her school merged with another. 3 capable women, 2 with university degrees, suddenly on the street. They kept their dignity. Hostels at night. Soup kitchens for meals. During the day, they walked London, avoiding places where former colleagues might see them. November 2002 was cold. Margaret's arthritis flared. Her granddaughters tried sheltering her, but you can't hide from cold rain in a city built on fog and stone. Margaret carried 1 cloth bag everywhere. Inside, a framed photograph from 1977, a newspaper clipping yellowed at the edges. Queen Elizabeth II noticed patterns. After 70 years of public life, 50 as a monarch, she'd developed instincts about people. During morning briefings, she'd glance out windows overlooking the palace grounds. Most homeless individuals moved through quickly, pushed along by security, or drawn away by better shelter. But these 3 women returned. Same spot. East Gate. Early mornings, late evenings. Her private secretary, Sir Malcolm, mentioned it during one briefing. The usual situation at the East Gate, ma'am. Security is monitoring. The elderly woman with the 2 younger women, the Queen asked. Sir Malcolm looked surprised. Among hundreds of daily details competing for royal attention, the Queen had noticed 3 specific people. Yes, ma'am. Find out who they are. It wasn't standard procedure. The monarchy existed at careful distance from subjects' personal struggles, but the Queen had broken small protocols before. Quiet interventions never publicized. Help offered through indirect channels. She'd learned long ago, sometimes the crown's weight could be used gently. By evening, palace staff began discreet inquiries. Margaret told her granddaughter the story while they waited for the soup kitchen to open. November 1977, Silver Jubilee year. She'd been volunteering at a community center in Lambeth when the Queen made a surprise visit. Not the grand tour with cameras, but a quieter afternoon engagement. Margaret had been embroidering handkerchiefs for a fundraiser. The Queen paused at her table, asked her name, commented on her needlework. "You have very steady hands," the Queen had said. 5 words. 25 years later, Margaret still heard them clearly. She'd kept the newspaper clipping, black and white photo of the Queen at the community center, Margaret visible in the background, head bowed over embroidery. That clipping traveled with her through marriage, widowhood, raising Sarah and Claire after their parents died, and now, plastic bag number 2. Palace security ran the inquiry. Archives confirmed. Queen's visit to Lambeth Community Center, November 1977. Photographs matched. Margaret's story checked out. Sir Malcolm delivered the report to the Queen that night. She made her decision immediately. Bring them inside. Tomorrow morning. Quietly. Sir Malcolm blinked. Ma'am, I want to speak with them. No precedent existed for this. Security protocols, publicity risks, the carefully maintained distance between crown and subject, all of it argued against direct intervention. But the Queen's tone left no room for debate. Staff scrambled to arrange what they euphemistically called a chance encounter. Find the women. Extend a discreet invitation. Bring them through a side entrance, no press. Meanwhile, Margaret, Sarah, and Claire had no idea their lives were about to change. That evening, they stood in line at St. Martin in the Fields soup kitchen. Sarah noticed 2 men in dark suits watching them. Not hostile, just watching. The men approached after the meal, showed identification, palace credentials. Her Majesty would like to invite you for tea tomorrow morning. Sarah thought it was a scam. Claire asked if they were joking. Margaret went very still. The Queen remembers the community center visit in 1977, one man said quietly. She'd like to speak with you. They spent that night in a hostel, unable to sleep. Was it real? A mistake? Some bureaucratic confusion? The car arrived at 9 a.m. Black sedan, palace insignia on the door. The driver was polite, said nothing about their worn clothes or obvious homelessness, drove them through side gates, away from tourist cameras. Inside, they were offered a chance to wash up, given clean clothes. Borrowed, staff emphasized not charity. Led through corridors lined with portraits and gilt frames. Sarah held her grandmother's arm. Margaret's hands trembled. They reached a small private sitting room. Not the throne room. Just a comfortable space with morning light and simple furniture. Queen Elizabeth II was standing when they entered. The Queen standing was unusual. Typically, she remained seated, allowing others to approach. But she stood, waiting. As 3 women were shown into her private sitting room. Mrs. Margaret, the Queen said, you had very steady hands. Margaret's composure broke. She covered her face, shoulders shaking. Sarah and Claire moved to support her, but the Queen gestured to chairs. Please, sit. The conversation lasted 40 minutes. No staff present except Sir Malcolm, positioned discreetly near the door. The Queen asked questions, specific, detailed questions about their situation. How had the pension error occurred? When had Sarah lost her nursing position? What had Claire been teaching? She listened more than she spoke, made occasional notes on a small pad. Margaret tried to explain, but kept faltering. The Queen's attention, undivided, genuinely interested, felt surreal after weeks of invisibility on London streets. We're not asking for help, ma'am, Sarah said quietly. I know, the Queen replied. But I'm offering it regardless. No promises were made, no commitments stated explicitly. But something in the Queen's tone suggested wheels were already turning. After 40 minutes, the Queen stood. The audience was over. Staff appeared, led the women to lunch in a staff dining room, then arranged a taxi with fare paid. As they left through the side gate, Claire whispered, "Did that just happen?" Margaret clutched her cloth bag. Inside, the 1977 clipping felt heavier now, weighted with new significance. That afternoon, the Queen made 3 phone calls. First, to a housing trust she quietly supported through private funds. Second, to a former government minister about pension bureaucracy. Third, to a hospital administrator regarding nursing vacancies. Each call was brief, specific, and devastatingly effective. The next week passed in strange suspension. Margaret, Sarah, and Claire heard nothing from the palace. No follow-up, no contact. They assumed the tea had been a polite gesture, the Queen's way of acknowledging Margaret's 1977 memory, nothing more. Margaret's health continued declining. November rain turned to December cold. The hostels were full most nights. They spent one night in an emergency shelter that smelled of disinfectant and defeat. Then small things started shifting. Sarah received a phone call, an interview for a nursing position at Royal Free Hospital. She'd applied there months ago, received no response. Now, suddenly, they wanted to meet her. Claire got a letter from a teaching placement agency. They'd reviewed her credentials, wanted to discuss opportunities. Margaret's pension case moved to a different department. New caseworker, fresh review. The error was obvious, they said. How had it been missed so long? The women didn't connect the dots immediately. London was large. Coincidences happened. But 3 coincidences in 1 week. Sarah's interview went well. The hospital administrator mentioned they'd had a special recommendation for her file, but didn't elaborate. She was offered the position within days. Claire's teaching agency placed her at a primary school in Islington, starting January. Margaret's pension was unfrozen. Back pay issued, arrears cleared, then the housing trust called. A flat was available, 2 bedrooms, ground floor, accessible for Margaret's mobility issues. In Pimlico, near where they'd been evicted. The rent was manageable with Sarah's new salary and Margaret's restored pension. But what about deposit? Sarah asked. First month's rent? The housing officer hesitated. An anonymous donor has covered 6 months' rent, plus deposit and a basic furnishing allowance. Who? The donor wished to remain private, no strings attached. They moved into the flat on a cold December morning. Sarah and Claire kept waiting for the catch, the hidden clause, the sudden reversal, but nothing came. The flat was simple, but clean. 2 bedrooms, small kitchen, living room with windows facing a quiet street. After 3 weeks of hostels, it felt like a palace. Margaret sat in the living room's single armchair, donated by the housing trust. She was crying again, but quietly now, relief mixed with disbelief. It was her, she said. We don't know that, Claire replied. But her tone lacked conviction. Who else? Sarah hung curtains, also donated, though from where remained unclear. Claire unpacked their few possessions. The 1977 photograph went on the mantel. They tried to piece together the timeline. The palace tea was November 15th. Sarah's job offer came November 22nd. Claire's placement arrived November 25th. Margaret's pension unfroze November 28th. The housing trust called December 2nd. Too quick, too coordinated, too fortunate. We can't prove anything, Sarah said. Maybe we're not supposed to, Margaret replied. That evening, a small package arrived. No return address. Inside, a white handkerchief, pressed and folded, with a royal cipher embroidered in blue thread. Tucked beneath it, a note in careful handwriting. For your steady hands. E.R. Margaret unfolded the handkerchief with shaking fingers. The embroidery was perfect. Professional work, not something quickly made. She held it to the light, studied the royal cipher. She remembered, Margaret whispered. They framed the handkerchief that night, hung it on the living room wall. A secret between 4 women, 3 who'd lost everything, 1 who'd quietly returned it. No one outside those walls would know. January 2003. Sarah returned to nursing at Royal Free Hospital, slipping back into 12-hour shifts and the careful choreography of patient care. Her colleagues asked where she'd been. Between positions, she said, which was technically true. Claire started at the Islington Primary School, teaching Year 3 students. The children were bright, chaotic, exactly what she'd missed during the 3 dark months of unemployment. Margaret's health improved with warmth, regular meals, and the psychological relief of stability. She started walking again, careful loops around Pimlico, relearning her old neighborhood. One afternoon in February, she passed the community center where she used to volunteer. On impulse, she went inside. The coordinator remembered her. "Margaret, where have you been?" "Away," Margaret said. "But I'm back now." She started volunteering again, 2 mornings a week, helping with fundraising events and administrative work. Full circle to 1977, except this time she wasn't embroidering handkerchiefs. She was helping organize support for families in crisis. Sarah and Claire noticed the change. Their grandmother, who'd seemed so frail in November, was rebuilding herself through service. "We should do something," Claire said one evening. "Like what?" "Help others, the way we were helped." They started small. Sarah contributed part of her salary. Claire added what she could. They set up a fund through the community center, small grants for families facing eviction, emergency rent assistance, basic needs. They called it the Steady Hands Project. Only 3 people knew why. A local newspaper ran a small article in March, Community Center Launches Support Initiative. Quoted Margaret, "Sometimes people just need a hand to steady themselves." The article didn't mention the Queen, homelessness, or November's desperate weeks. But the Palace Clipping Service flagged it anyway. The article landed on the Queen's desk during her morning paper review. Among reports of parliamentary debates and international summits, a 3-paragraph story from a Pimlico community newsletter. She read it twice, clipped it carefully, placed it in a personal file that Sir Malcolm maintained but never questioned. No comment to staff. But observers noted a slight smile. 3 months later, the palace announced the Queen would visit the Pimlico Community Center. First return since 1977. Staff assumed it was coincidence. The area was undergoing renewal worthy of royal attention. Sir Malcolm suspected otherwise. The visit was scheduled for April 2003. Standard engagement. Tour the facilities, meet volunteers, praise local initiatives. No special arrangements. But the private secretary quietly ensured Margaret would be working that day. Margaret didn't know if the Queen knew she volunteered there. Probably not. London had thousands of community centers. The odds of random overlap seemed impossible. But then, the last 3 months had been built on impossible odds. The day arrived. Security swept the building. Press photographers positioned outside. Inside, volunteers lined up to meet the Queen, including a 74-year-old woman with steady hands and a secret. The Queen moved through the community center with practiced ease. She'd done thousands of such visits. Smile, question, comment, move on. Polite interest, genuine but brief. When she reached Margaret, their eyes met. Time compressed. November rain, soaked plastic bags, a small sitting room, 3 phone calls, a handkerchief with royal cipher. All of it contained in 2 seconds of recognition. "Still doing good work," the Queen said simply. Margaret curtsied, deeper than necessary, longer than protocol required. "Thank you for everything, ma'am." The Queen's expression didn't change, but she nodded, barely perceptible. They both understood. The public couldn't know, but they did. The Queen spent extra time at the center, asked detailed questions about the Steady Hands project, suggested the palace might make a small donation through the appropriate charitable channels. Media covered the visit as routine royal engagement. Photographs showed the Queen meeting volunteers, touring facilities, shaking hands. Margaret appeared in background of several shots, unidentified in captions. No mention of homeless families, midnight interventions, or quiet miracles. That's exactly how the Queen wanted it. That evening, Sir Malcolm received instructions to arrange a modest grant to the community center. Anonymous, naturally, funneled through existing charitable trusts. The work would continue quietly. Years passed. The Steady Hands project helped 200 families over the next decade. Small interventions, rent deposits, emergency funds, connections to services. Nothing dramatic. Just steady support when people needed it most. Margaret lived to 84, dying peacefully in 2012 in the same Pimlico flat. Sarah and Claire were with her. The framed handkerchief hung on the wall where it had been since December 2002. Sarah continued nursing. Claire kept teaching. They expanded the Steady Hands project, recruiting other volunteers, building networks with housing trusts and social services. When Queen Elizabeth II died in September 2022, Sarah and Claire watched the coverage. Obituaries catalogued her reign, 70 years, historic transitions, modernizing the monarchy, dedication to duty. Nothing about 3 women outside palace gates. No mention of quiet phone calls or anonymous donations. Claire took down the framed handkerchief. The note was still tucked behind it, handwriting slightly faded but legible. "For your steady hands, E.R." "Should we tell someone?" Sarah asked. Claire shook her head. "She wanted it private. We keep it private." They donated the handkerchief to the community center's archive. Labeled simply, "Gift from Anonymous Supporter, 2002. Only 2 people now knew the full story. 2 years later, Sarah gave an interview for a local history project documenting community initiatives in Pimlico. The interviewer asked about the Steady Hands project's name. Sarah paused, chose words carefully. "My grandmother met someone once who told her she had steady hands. She never forgot that kindness." She didn't name the Queen, didn't mention the palace, just the essential truth. One person acknowledging another's dignity. The interview was archived, barely noticed. but it contained something important, proof that power could be used gently, that helping others didn't require publicity or credit. The handkerchief remained in the community center's small archive room, royal cipher visible but faded. Most visitors walked past without noticing it. Those who did notice assumed it was replica memorabilia. Close enough. The full story stayed hidden. No memoir revealed it. No documentary uncovered it. Some secrets are kept because they're more powerful, unrevealed. But the work continued. The Steady Hands Project expanded to 4 London boroughs, helped 500 families, trained new volunteers in the quiet art of dignified support. Sarah died in 2028, Claire in 2032. Both left instructions: keep the project running, keep the story private. New volunteers sometimes asked about the handkerchief in the archive. Gift from a supporter, they were told. True enough. Meanwhile, historians continued analyzing Queen Elizabeth II's reign. They documented state occasions, political crises, family drama, the big moments, the public record. They missed the small miracles. 3 women outside palace gates. 1 queen who noticed. 50 years of protocol broken in a single phone call. The handkerchief stayed in its frame. The secret stayed quiet. And the steady hands kept helping others.